Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to untangle some of the most recurring, stubborn messes in the world. We're going to do this by shifting our perspective entirely, moving away from constantly blaming external forces and instead looking at how systems actually work under the hood. Seriously, if you've ever felt frustrated by problems that just refuse to go away, whether that's in your personal life, your business, or society at large, you are in the exact right place. Today we're basically putting on a brand new pair of glasses.
Let's kick things off with a classic ancient Sufi story. A group of blind men encounter an elephant for the first time. One guy feels the ear and says, "Oh, it's like a rug." Another grabs the trunk and says, "No, it's a pipe." A third feels the leg and calls it a pillar. Now, they all felt a real piece of the elephant, but they all perceived the whole thing completely wrongly. It's a perfect metaphor for us. The true behavior of a system just cannot be understood by only looking at its isolated pieces. We have to zoom out.
To get a feel for this, picture a slinky toy. If I hold a slinky on my open palm, grasp the top, and pull my bottom hand away, the slinky bounces and yo-yos. Now, what actually made it bounce? You'd probably say, well, you taking your hand away. But wait, if I do the exact same thing with the empty cardboard box the slinky came in, the box just falls flat. It doesn't bounce at all. And that brilliantly illustrates our massive paradigm shift for today. It is the internal structure of the system itself that causes its own behavior. The hand, it just releases the latent behavior that was already waiting inside.
So, here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 4 main areas: the systems lens, the anatomy of a system, stocks and flows, and finally, feedback loops. All right, let's jump right into part 1, the systems lens. We're going to shift our perspective from isolated events to underlying structures.
You know, it is incredibly natural to want to point fingers at external forces whenever we have problems, but systems thinking completely subverts this worldview. It shows us that economic booms and recessions are actually inherent behaviors of the market economy system itself. Competitors don't typically cause you to lose market share. It's your own business policies setting up the conditions for that loss. Even something like the flu. The virus doesn't just randomly attack you out of nowhere. Your body provides the specific conditions for it to flourish. And drug addiction? It's not just an individual failing. It is a highly complex system involving vulnerable people, huge economic incentives for dealers, and societal structures that make it nearly impossible to eradicate. In short, the system causes its own behavior.
Moving right along to Section 2, Anatomy of a System. Let's deconstruct the basic building blocks.
So, what actually makes a system, rather than just a random pile of stuff? Well, it needs 3 things: elements, interconnections, and a purpose. If you scatter sand on a road by happenstance, that's not a system. You can add sand, sweep it away, and it's still just sand. But a football team, a forest ecosystem, or your own digestive tract, absolutely a system. They have distinct parts, those parts interact based on specific rules, and together they achieve an outcome that is totally different from what any single part could pull off on its own.
Now here's a highly counterintuitive truth. The visible, tangible elements of a system, they actually matter the least to its overall identity. The invisible purpose dictates almost everything. Think about it. You can swap out every single player on a football team over a decade, and it is still fundamentally the same team. Elements are super easy to swap. But if you change the rules of the game, the interconnections, say from football rules to basketball rules, you literally have a completely different game. And if you shift the purpose of a university from spreading knowledge to just maximizing corporate profit, it changes the entire system profoundly, even if the campus buildings and the students haven't changed at all.
Okay, so how do we actually figure out a system's invisible purpose? Well, you don't listen to its stated rhetoric. You watch what it consistently does over time. If you watch a frog turn right and catch a fly, and then it turns left and catches a fly, it's pretty safe to say its purpose is catching flies. If a government claims it cares deeply about the environment, but it allocates exactly $0 to it in the budget, then environmental protection is clearly not its actual purpose. Actions always speak louder than words in systems thinking.
All right, let's head into Section 3, Stocks and Flows. This is where we bring time into the equation.
A stock is really the bedrock of any system. It's the part you can see, feel, count, or measure right in the present moment. Obviously, a stock can be physical, like the amount of water sitting in a reservoir or the inventory of books in a store. But importantly, it can also be a completely intangible accumulation, like your own personal self-confidence or the level of trust in a relationship. A stock is basically just the present memory of everything that has ever flowed into and out of it over time.
To really visualize this, there is no better example than the universal bathtub analogy. The water sitting in the tub is your stock. The faucet running is your inflow, and the open drain is your outflow. It is beautifully simple, but it's incredibly powerful for understanding dynamic equilibrium. Because look, if the faucet is pouring faster than the drain is draining, the water rises. If the drain is faster, it falls. And if they are perfectly matched, the water level stays completely flat and constant, even though water is continuously rushing through it. And here's a pro tip that people often miss. You don't always have to increase the inflow to fill a tub. Sometimes, the easiest fix is just plugging the drain.
Now, because flows aren't instant, water takes time to actually drain out, and forests take decades to grow back. Stocks generally change pretty slowly, and this gives the entire system a sense of momentum. They act like giant shock absorbers, and honestly, this is a fantastic thing. This built-in time lag provides us with a crucial buffer. It gives us the room to maneuver, spot a developing problem, and fix our policies before the whole system overflows or runs completely dry.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 4, Feedback Loops. This is where things get really fascinating, because this is how the system basically runs itself. So, rule of thumb, if you ever notice a specific behavior that just keeps persisting over time, I can almost guarantee there's a feedback loop working silently behind the scenes. A feedback loop kicks in when a change in the size of the stock triggers a decision or a rule that then adjusts the flows, which obviously changes the stock again. It is a closed cycle. Let's use a super relatable example of a corrective loop, your bank account. If your cash level dips a little too low for comfort, that information feeds right back to your brain. You make a decision to pick up some extra shifts at work, your inflow of cash goes up, and boom, your stock of money is replenished. The stock level is literally feeding back through a chain of signals to manage its own rates.
At a high level, our world is essentially governed by two distinct flavors of loops. Balancing loops are your stabilizers. They are always trying to keep things within a safe, targeted range. They seek harmony and push back against change. Reinforcing loops, on the other hand, are the wildcards. They are those vicious or virtuous circles that just amplify whatever direction the system is already heading in. They are the engines of massive explosions of growth or terrifying runaway collapses.
Let's break down a balancing loop first. These loops are basically heat-seeking missiles for a specific goal. Take the daily ritual of drinking coffee. You have a desired energy level in your head, right? When your actual stored energy inevitably drops during the afternoon, a discrepancy is created. That gap is what drives your physical action to grab a cup of coffee. The caffeine mobilizes energy, raising your stock right back up to your target goal. Even a hot cup of coffee cooling down on a desk is doing the exact same thing. The physical laws of thermodynamics are balancing the temperature to match the room. It just constantly seeks stability.
Conversely, we have reinforcing loops. These generate more input to a stock simply because there is already a lot there. They snowball. The ultimate classic example of this is compound interest. You put money in the bank, it earns interest. That interest gets added to your stock. Now, because you have a larger stock, it earns even more interest, which creates an even larger stock. It is a completely self-multiplying runaway cycle.
And the absolute crucial takeaway here is that this growth is not a straight line. Look at the 10% interest column for a second. In the first 6 years, the account grows by about $77. But in the exact same time frame, for the next 6 years, it grows by over $136. Just like compound interest, the more capital you have sitting there, the faster the exponential growth becomes. The line just curves upward faster and faster.
And the crazy thing is, we see these compounding loops everywhere in the real world. Think about soil erosion. More erosion means fewer plants can take hold, which means fewer roots to hold the soil together, which just leads to even more erosion. It's a vicious downward cycle. Or take an economic spiral. Higher everyday prices force workers to demand higher wages, which in turn forces companies to raise their prices again to cover the new wages. Whether it is biology, ecology, or economics, these compounding, reinforcing loops are the underlying engines of massive, runaway change in our world.
So, what does this all mean for us? Well, by understanding these foundational building blocks, how elements connect through a hidden purpose, how stocks act as our natural buffers, and how balancing and reinforcing loops dictate all behavior, we can completely revolutionize how we solve problems. We can finally stop blaming random outside forces. We can stop slapping band-aids on symptoms. Instead, we can start hunting for the true leverage points, those hidden rules and feedback loops, to create profound, lasting change by restructuring the system itself.
To wrap up, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought about the systems you interact with every single day. Think about a recurring, annoying frustration you have in your life right now. Is it possible that the system isn't actually broken at all, but is actually perfectly designed to produce exactly that frustrating result through a hidden feedback loop? I really encourage you to take this new lens and start exploring the structures of the world around you. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and remember, keep looking for those underlying structures.